Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Transfer Market Metrics for Anfield Index. It's number 14 this time. 13 was definitely lucky for some because we like the look of Kuna. Isaac, I think everyone knows the attackers were good. And now in 14, we are talking defensive positions. Two defenders, centre-back specifically, and one defensive midfielder on the docket for you. And the man who's run the numbers and has given me the face of I like, I don't like, hype will come into it, and the variety of answers as ever is Dr. Phil Barter. Bart, is it fair to say a mixed bag we're going to phrase this one under?
Yeah, I think very much so. I think there's some physical attributes that are probably missing in all three. I would say that's probably fair. And if you're going to ask me to rank them, I would say these were an option for the summer, but maybe not the first option.
Yeah. They are interesting, these three, but let's get into it straight away. Two centre-backs. So we'll go, first of all, to Germany and talk France. So I'm sure you've seen the name recently, people. Castello, Lukeba. Now, only recently signed a new contract with Red Bull Leipzig, but been linked with Liverpool for a long time. And again, the rumours keep going. And maybe it's because he's plays on the left-hand side, even though he is ultimately right-footed. But this is a player that I can't pretend I've watched much of. I've seen Leipzig a few times in the Champions League, but people like the look of, people talk about this kid as a real option for us. I'm intrigued. What do the stats say for Castello Lukeba if we do the normal profiling that we do?
I think starting with the public stats, I think to know here, he's only 184 centimetres, right? So that's Virgil is 193.
Yeah.
Abraham is 193. So that's something to consider, right? That's almost 10 centimetres less than our two starting centre halves, right? And even if you want to go Joe Gomez is taller than him. So that is just a little point in the docket, should we say, to consider. Just to looking at playing time, because we ask our players to play 3,000 minutes plus if they're going to start. If they're going to be a rotation option, 2.5 is probably they've got to be good. He had around the what we needed the previous two seasons. So in France, he was clocking up nearly 3,000 minutes. Moved to Red Bull and clocked in, let's just be kind, 2,200 in 24 starts at 32. This season, he has only played 13 games, so that's a low amount. Check his injury record in a minute. So he's clocked up less than 1,000 minutes. So that's not an amazing position to start with, should we say, right? He's probably had one season of minutes in his last three where you go, that's what we need. Yeah. But let's just look at his profile. So looking at his profiles, this bottom box here is generally what we look at for our defensive players. He has aerials 1. Remember his height, 10 centimetres less than Virgil van Dijk, 5 centimetres less than Gomez. His aerials is in the 7th percentile. Now that is going to be a problem in the Premier League where you need to be dominant in both boxes, particularly at centre half. So just checking what his aerial win rate was. We'll go to miscellaneous. Aerial win rate is 50s for his previous 3 seasons. That is not good enough. That's lower than our fullbacks. Yeah, so considering Virgil was not only about the 80s, to be down at 50, that's 30% less. That's not great. Even Joe Gomez is higher than that, and he's a smaller centre half. But blocks and clearances, 50%. Let's be kind. Not great. Might be the way they play. Tackles, he's making more tackles than you would expect because potentially not reading the game as well as he could do. In between, what's he doing? So this is where he's moving the ball from one box to the next. So from the defensive to the attacking. take-ons, bizarrely, he's at 98th percentile. So
wow.
I'm not quite sure I'm comfortable with my centre half taking players on with the ball, but anyway, there you go. He seems to have the ability to do it. His passing is 77th, and he's attempting 89th percentile for passes in the opposition's box. So he's more of a passer than a carrier. Carriers is in the 60th percentage rather than passing. So he's going to look to pass that ball and maybe a take on and then pass it. So okay, let's put that all to one side. What's he doing in terms of once he's in the opposition box? And these are fairly low. I mean, you might want to say, okay, yeah, but fair enough. Centre halves don't do a lot. This is in comparison with centre halves, by the way. These stats are in comparison with centre halves. I mean, if you look at Joe Gomez, who is in and outside and is rumoured to be the guy that might be the guy to make way. Joe's defensive numbers here: 95th, 84th, 81st, 46th, and this guy hasn't played for a bloody month, right? Between the boxes, pass completions in the 90th. So Liverpool defenders need to be able to pass the football, and they need to be able to pass it in the 90th percentile. And even in the opposite box, we know Joe Gomez hasn't scored for Liverpool, right? He's like Rob Jones, for age-old reference for those who are our age. But he's still got non-penalty XG in the 60th and 70th compared with the guy we're looking at, who's in the 11th for those. So, yeah, it's not a great picture, right? But if you lay on what does he look like, his profile is in similar some way to Joe Gomez. I would, it's an interesting profile. Okay, now the advantage of playing in the Bundesliga, I put that right, is that you get physical data produced by the league. So he has clocked a top speed or an average of 33, which anything over 28 is quick. So he's decent. His distance is 104 total. And what do we say? About 10, 11 games. So just short of 10K a game, which is about Premier League levels. Intensive runs 51, so he's making about 511, about 50 a game. So there's some bits there to pick out where you can see some of the physical attributes. But his aerial duel 119 in, what do we say he's made? How many games has he made? He's played in 13 games. He's won 19 headers.
Wow.
Just leaving it there for people to think about. So when we look at the pack that I'll put together for him, this is a light speed game. We've done this one before, but he's on the ball a lot in the minutes, but you'd expect that as a centre half. He's involved in a lot of the low level ball rotations. It's 56% of the time he's in the low chain events, right? So he has actually produced a couple of passes into the left half space, which is okay, not too bad. But in terms of EPV, what's he stopping? More importantly, when we look at it for him, he's stopping 96% of the threat coming at him. So that's not too bad.
Decent.
That's okay. Decent.
Yeah.
Threat-wise, plays on the left of us. Is that right? On the left-hand side of the defence, he is.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's a fair. So he's putting a lot of 7%, 5%. That's 13% of the time, which is on balance with his partner on the right and doing their fair share in the middle. So it's not a horrendous, should we say, movement around. If we look at where he is on the map, he's probably out here. He's got some connections. They play slightly differently from us. That doesn't take the ball from the keeper, which is a bit odd. But so I would suggest this is a prospect player with some potential. But when you break it down, I think we're always fairly good at saying, well, who's he coming in for? It's not great. I mean, if you compare it with Canate, Canate there dwarfs someone nearly everything apart from touches, broken passes. And I'm not even going to be unkind and show you what Virgil van Dijk looks like. So, he clearly, the scouts have looked at him, right? They clearly have made an assumption on something. He is quick, right? But and they might be looking at him to play. Is it centre half that he's been rumoured for, or is it left back, or is it one of them?
Played left back a few times in his career as well. I think a lot of people look at that double element, but the stats do show it is minimal time at left back.
Yeah.
Minimal.
Yeah. So I would say this is a low ranked one, should we say, considering looking at other prospects we've looked at. I'd say this was lower down the give it down on it. But what's the price quoted?
Well, if you scoffed before at a prospect, Lukeba, people, he signed an extension, didn't he, in October last year with a reported release clause around the £75 million mark as well. So,
yeah, that's that seems a bit high. But the caveat I will put in, right, is that last season he seemed to be a starter for Leipzig, right? He seemed to play a lot of games. That might have been a history thing, but that doesn't mean he's going to return to that former game, right? So it's just he could be stuck between a coming back from an injury season. He's not played as much, but from what we're looking at in the last, based on just sort of 500 minutes played in the last year, he doesn't profile as high, should we say, as some of the other players have looked at centre half.
No. And we always try and be fair. We dress it up, people. But through hamstring and injury problems, it tells us he's missed 14 1-4 games this season. As Bart said on the screen there, these are stats in comparison to other centre halves. Blocks, 47th percentile. Clearances, 45th. Tackles, 41. An aerial dual success of just over 50% and in the 7th percentile for aerials win. Long story short, people, it's probably a good time to move on to our next target, isn't it, realistically, rather than dress anything up, whether you like Lukeba or not. So next on the docket, and this is interesting, Bart, because I know this is a player that a lot of people clocked. Romano had that story. It's been confirmed, hasn't it, that Dean Huijsen, Dutch, Spanish officially, although obviously brought up in Holland, chose Spain as his team, done very well at Bournemouth, who are doing very well in the league. £50 million release clause. And a lot of people liked this player before. I am genuinely intrigued. What do the numbers say about this kid?
Yeah, I think I remember our game we played against him, and I was like, he looks... opportunity again. They have a lot of ball, Bournemouth, right? And in that game, I thought he played right. He was passing it well, he was leading a lot of attacks. So that is kind of his breakout season, though. But look at his minutes, right? So they got him off Juve, where he made no starts last. So Juve bought him off Roma, and then he didn't play. Right, so the combination of his two teams last season, he played just over 500 minutes. So, by the way, that's some outstanding scouting by Bournemouth. To go and buy a player that can compete in the Premier League off less than 600 minutes at top line football is amazing. But put that to a side. He's done 1,500 minutes, give or take a bit, for Bournemouth. Remember, they're not in Europe. So they're not going to hit the dizzy heights of us. When we were looking at the Wolves players last week, they were in around the same sort of, because they just only play Premier League games, right? So opportunity to get the high numbers isn't there. He started 15 out of 20. Okay, fair enough. We'll have to look at whether he's got any injuries. Probably not. But so he's building up those minutes. So this, if you're looking for a player to come in and not be first choice, but be slightly better or give competition for some other backups, could be a player to go for. If we look at now this is a lot better in terms of the profile. Yeah. Down here we have a defensive box. Aerials, 69th percentile. So still not amazing. We'll look at the exact percentage in a minute, but that's better than the previous line. Clearances, blocks, interceptions, all in the high 80s or 90s, with interceptions being 96. So that suggests that he is blocking up the passing chain. He's being proactive in winning the ball and also blocking a pass in the lane. Okay. His tackles is only 69, which is kind of the profile we want. We don't want our defenders tackling. We'd rather they were preemptive, or being in a position to block the pass, which is what this profile suggests. How does he move the ball from winning it into the other end of the pitch? Progressive passes received is decent. Touches in the attacking box. Again, for centre half, that's good. Doesn't take any players on. Like to see that. But in terms of what he's doing, so he's got a mix of carries and passes. Progressive carries, it's over 20 minutes close to the goal, is at 92, which I think you saw in our game. He was bringing it out.
Yeah.
Bringing it forward. So, but he was also making progressive passes at 80th, and he was passing attempted at 63rd. When he's in the opposition box, he's involved in the 95th percentile shot creating actions for a centre half. That's very good. That's really good. Shots, he takes just under half a shot a game. Just to check that aerial rate for you.
Come on.
He's just below 60.
Okay.
57. So better than the previous guy. Not so great. I mean, to give comparison, just to be fair, Joe Gomez's aerials. Where are we going? So Joe Gomez's aerials for his career with us is 58, right? He has a high of 70. He's in and around 65, 75. So Dean is not far off that, if not being. He could do with being near the Joe Gomez level, right? He's going to be third choice. Because I think Kwanzaa's in and around the early 60s as well. But so let's break that down a bit. Let's try and get a bit more detailed on him. So what does he look like? So he's playing left side defence. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. So he's involved in their passing chains. He's pretty well. He's got some. They have a good structure. Bournemouth. They're very good passing side. Not too dissimilar to some of the formations that we have on our pass maps. So that's a tick in terms of him coming to play against us. This game is against us, by the way, as well. So it gives you a bit of indication. He's on the ball pretty much every other minute. So that's very, very good. And he's involved in some shorter chains, which is what you'd expect. Okay. Not elsewhere. EPV, what's he stopping? So he stopped 80% of threat against him, was against us. So that gives you a bit of a measure. I think he had most on his side. So that would have been a tricky thing to have, and he had Dom. So he might have a double team going on. So, but 80%, it's not too bad. He lost 15. In terms of defensive actions, what does it look like? Again, a balance. He's probably doing more defensive actions than his partner. But again, if you look at who played his side, probably understandable wise, but that's not a bad thing. If we look at how he did stats wise, he had a 40% dual rate for a centre half, which is not too bad against us. Created 8% of their EPV, their threats, which is in and amongst their top 5 players. So that's not a bad profile to be having. On the day against the league leaders, he is bang on all the metrics there for a centre half. So that would have been in the same game that Canate and Van Dijk and his partner would have been in, right? So he's bang on the metrics, didn't exceed them, but he's bang on. So that's not a bad profile. It's just the one caveat is the aerials is not what we need it to be. I think Sai sent through his speed data. I can't remember what city was it. Early 30s, I think it was. Was it 31.5? Was his top speed? Something like that.
A bit higher you're giving me, 33.46, so nearly 30. Decent.
Yeah, so he's quick. He's quick for a centre half, which again is another tick. So for me, I don't know what the price is. You're probably going to tell me it's an expensive one, and fair enough, I'll walk away. But no, I'd say he has a lot of the attributes that we would be looking for a centre half. I mean, if you compare him to some of ours, if we just compare it with Joe Gomez, quickly, we can't. We compare him to Canate. Canate's a good player. Virgil van Dijk, very different. But yeah, so he's a different part, which just is not a bad thing to have. So yeah, I would say he could be good, but that aerial ability would be a concern of mine because our centre halves have to win the majority of the aerial balls. It's just the way we set up, and I think even City have had centre halves that dominate aerially in their box, and they are a supreme possession side. So yeah, that would be the only one of the few concerns I would have about signing him.
I suppose the big question then, because you called out a lot, Barts, and you're right, like the interceptions to be in the 96th percentile at such a young age, replicating what we want our centre halves to do. There is a lot of green on that screen, like blocks 89th, as you said, clearances 88th. There is a lot, even in the opposition box, he's got that as well. For a 50 million pound release clause, is the fact that VVD and Ibu, you're talking early 80s, very high 70s, just too big a gap? And it's funny, I was almost thinking this. Saigo Pal's just put there, can aerials be coached in any way? Is there any way you think they may look and go, okay, 57.7 is too low, but if we got that to 6, can you bridge that gap, or is 50 million just not doable?
I mean, 50 million is a lot of money for let's be honest here, this guy would come in and compete with Konza. Right? But he's not going to compete with Konate and Van Dijk. And he certainly isn't being signed if Van Dijk doesn't sign a contract. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. So can you improve aerially? Yes, you can. Right? Can he improve 20%? I mean, I was just going to see, is there a trend? He's improved by a percentage point from when he was in Syria. Right. The Premier League is a more dominant league. It'd be interesting to see what it is at the end of the season. It really would, because again, opportunity. He might go through a run. The tactic against Bournemouth isn't necessarily to bombard the box, right? It's generally not what they do. So again, opportunity. So you can coach it a little bit. I'm not sure you can coach it up to being 80% percentile. But then to flip that round, what do we need it to be for him to be a decent backup? And what we need it to be is high 60s. So you might be able to get away with getting him up somewhere around that. If you get to 70, then fair enough. But £50 million for a third choice centre half, that might be a bit rich for my, but it's not my money. So, fair enough. There might be better options out there, should we put it that way.
Which is a shame in a way, people, because let's be honest, if his aerial percentile was 70% or more, me and Bart's will be telling you, pull the trigger right this second, get it lined up for the summer, like, end of story. 100%. He's the one. But
100%.
That's why the stats are the stats at times. And if you can't bridge that gap, I like Huijsen. I've seen him. He's impressed me. But that aerial we need aerial beasts at the back. That's what we have. It's what works for us. So we'll see if anything comes off that one. And the final name, Barts, this is one when we got obviously searching around from the analyst. I am fascinated by this one because just to break it down, people, just in case you don't know, Lamine Camara, young midfielder. I think it was Metz before, as we were told. Now he's at Monaco. He went this summer. Literally, the one thing that, as they say, the analyst info we got, Barts, we like is this is a player who can play the 6, the 8, and is an all-round player. And as Slot talked about recently, a player that can change direction quickly, is attractive, especially you have to be able to survive. Similar to Huijsen, I wonder if one fatal statistic is just going to end your interest. But we will profile, it's well worth doing, the fact we've watched Lamine Camara. What do the stats say?
I will come back to that stat in a minute, but we will start with the minutes played, right? Because he has clocked over 2,000 minutes last season. He is well on track for matching that this season. So he started nearly all of Monaco's games. So there's no reason why he would match last season minutes. So he's started to build those numbers up.
Yeah.
He's not really. Calling him a goal scorer would be unfair. He's not. Okay, but he has his goals and assists have creeped up over the last 2-3 seasons. So he was at less than 4. He's now at 0.13. His assists have gone from 0.16 a game to 0.39. So that's coming up. XG has gone notched up a bit as well. And XGA has notched up from 10% to 20%. So it's going in the right direction. And considering he's playing a 6 or 8, those are not bad numbers. I think we looked at comparative graph, the other one, the PSG. They're not that far off that ballpark, to be honest with you. In terms of his passing, just to get some of that out of the way, his volume, so he's about 80, so that's gone up. So his pass completion has improved. So it could be his pass collection has been better this season, and his volume has increased. Okay, so he's completed more passes. Attempted to complete more passes in half the games this season than he did last season. So that's good. Shows that he's on the rise. And his biggest change, I would suggest, is his long ball game. So his long ball game has gone up from a completion rate of 60 to less than 60, over 60, and the volume's changed. So yeah, there's some things to look at. Looking at the percentiles, so defensively, here you want your midfielders, tackles, interception, blocks. That's kind of where you want your defensive guys to be, because the clearances in there is a last minute thing, right? Aerials could do with being higher, but we'll return to that in a minute. Blocks 76, interceptions, tackles in the 80th. That's okay. That shows you he's doing what we need to do, which is blocking passing lanes, being proactive, and then if need be, making a tackle, making a dual rate. But that's fine. We want him to do that. If we look at touches in the defender box, okay, that's not great. He's not really a carrier. He doesn't make progressive passes, but he does make a fair amount of. He's in the 60th percentile for passes attempted. Pass completion, 80th percentile, which is quite low. 25th percentile for someone playing there. Considering his volume's gone up, that's a slight concern, should we say? What does he do in the opposition box? Some more pleasing green, 80s for shot creating action and non-penalty and the assists. In terms of assists, he's in 95th, so that shows you that he has some impact in there. Maybe he's playing more of an 8 than a 6, so we can see. In terms of the goals, he's low down, but you'd see that with Dom and others. I mean, Dom's only started showing that, but would be hard there as well. If you start comparing him with some of our players in that role, so Curtis dwarfs him, but then Curtis is a little bit further on. If we look at it, comparing him with Ryan, he is almost the mirror opposite. So Ryan has become very good at passing the football. Again, box thing for Liverpool, making those progressive, carrying it. And equally, he's winning his aerials, which is a really key thing. The stuff in the box, though, Ryan doesn't do, and that's where Camara is excelling. So there's some things there. I've got Dom as well, which is another player, a little bit different. Dom's plays a very, very different position, and I haven't got any other right midfielders. So I think it's a different kind of profile, should we say? Now, returning to the key stat, right, is he is 173 centimeters. So he's smaller than the centre half profile. So he is, let's get this right, 20 centimeters lower, smaller, but no, nearly 30 centimeters lower than Van Dijk and Arte. That's small. That's not even beating around the bush here. That's for a midfielder, that's Mac kind of level. So I'm not sure you could have the two of them playing together, but you might not want to do that. So, and before anyone says, no, he's not going to grow 30 centimeters, it's just not going to happen. All right. So, But if we look at some of the stuff, the dashboard we've got for him, what's he involved with? He's on the ball nearly every minute for them, which is good. What you want to do. He's involved in passing chains up to about 10 passes. That's pretty good. how's he doing in terms of getting into the various boxes? He's in the half spaces and zone 14, which is what you want.
Yeah.
So I think he's played a lot as the 8, if you get what I mean. So can't visit in this pod. So yeah, there's some things to like about his play. In terms of what does he do to stop threat, and he stopped 64%. It's a little bit on the low side considering he's in a key position. But if we look at what does he actually do off the ball, so this might be like we've just done City. If people want to watch that, and we moved City into areas to make us small. We overloaded them on the wide areas, not in the middle. I'm not saying Monaco are that smart, but the limited number of defensive actions in the middle of the park wouldn't be a great thing for him to be involved in, should we say. And in terms of XG, he didn't produce anything. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. There are some things to like about him. Certainly in the box and the defensive side. In between the boxes could be a bit limited, but I don't have the physical metrics for him, but apart from the fact that he's a bit smart.
Yeah. I mean, as you say that, it is interesting because, I mean, those 3 metrics that you called out in defensive side, 88th percentile for interceptions is really good. The tackle's 82nd. So you say he's blocking the passing lanes, he's doing what he needs to be doing. And the other thing is, I mean, in the box, there's certain elements. And like you said, when you look at his profile and what we were told by the analysts is he can play almost, they said he's almost like a Naby Keita type. He could play the 8, he could play the 6, maybe a push, even go a bit higher. But with the passing, the low volume, I mean, 65th percentile for passes, as you said, our midfielders need to be able to move the ball well. The pass completion to be 80 is lower than a Liverpool midfielder. Does this remind you a little bit of, for me, when we called him out and the stuff you're calling out, almost like, do you remember when we looked at Belabor at Brighton, does a lot of the stuff, but maybe a bit not quite the best on the ball, also combined with the fact that he is tiny. You dress it up how you want, but he's absolutely tiny. Do you think it puts him on the list, but he's never going to be at the top of it?
Yeah, I think this could be. I mean, you're going to tell me he's like 40 million pound per hour or something, but yeah, I would say he could be on the list. He does profile, like you said, about like a bit like that at Brighton, but and some other players we've looked at. But he would be. I'd be really shocked if this was first choice. I really would, considering the lad we looked at last year and the guy from PSG. I would have a lot higher up. So, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a young guy in the French league, that's the guy I'm going to get. I wouldn't get this guy. But he does have some, you're right. He has some elements to like. There are some bits he can coach. And some of this also, I have to say, the way teams play has a massive impact on what your midfielders do, right? Remember we did the DM at Atalanta. Edison. Again, very similar profile, right? He was okay in the opposition box. He was brilliant defensively, but in between it, he wasn't great. And that's purely because they just asked him to win it and give the ball to another player. So if you're not asking him to do massive amounts on the ball, his opportunity to go and do it to sharpen the stats is going to be limited. The only thing I would say is that you would expect his pass completion to be high if he's just giving it. But I would say he could be on the list, but it would be a lower choice for me if I was having to rank them.
There we go, people. It's funny how a week can change things. I mean, you think we were crazy on Kuna. Isaac was a no-brainer when we looked at the forwards. And you think to this week, Huijsen, so much to like if the aerial duel success was 10% higher. Camara, a lot to play with there. But when you're probably smaller than Mac, it maybe kills it that way. And Lukeba, again, certain elements to like, certain things to be worried about in the air. But when they're talking about a 75 million price point, dead in the water, I think would be our analysis on that. So there you go, ladies and gents. In short, when you run the stats on some of them, there's things to like, but there's no one at the top of the list this week, is there, in that regard? So it is what it is. But Lukeba, Huijsen, Camara, likely on the list, very likely not at the top of it. That's the big summary we can give you from this. All it leaves me to say, as ever, for episode 14, we are rattling through the players now for you. Hopefully, we are well prepared ahead of a summer transfer window that might have something to do, and we can always refresh these players. But Bart, for the time, the analysis, and maybe even like Guess Who, for just knocking a few tiles down off the list, it is much appreciated.
No problem. Anytime. Love a Guess Who reference.
And ladies and gents, that was another Transfer Market Metrics for Anfield.